The salt line had gone gray. Dean noticed it first, because Dean always noticed when things stopped working the way they should. He crouched low, ran a thumb across the powder that had protected this hallway for 60 years. It crumbled like ash under his touch. Cold. Wrong. Sam. His brother looked up from the laptop, reading glasses sliding down his nose. They'd been in the Men of Letters bunker for 3 days now, chasing a pattern that didn't want to be found. People dying. Not unusual. People dying and not going anywhere that was new. The wards dead. Dean stood dusting his hands on his jeans. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered once, twice, then held. Since when do wards just quit? Sam closed the laptop and moved to the hallway, squinting at the line Dean had disturbed. His expression shifted through 3 stages of concern before settling on the one Dean hated most, the "we have a problem" face. They shouldn't. Not unless something's pulling power from the other side. Great, so we're being haunted by our own security system. Not haunted? Sam straightened, glanced toward the far end of the corridor where the warding circle met the old armory entrance. Drained. Dean didn't like that word. Drained meant something was feeding. Feeding meant something was here. He went for his gun. The demon came through the main door 3 hours later, and it came screaming. They'd set the trap carefully. Dean at the entrance with holy water and a sawed-off. Sam in the map room with the exorcism ready. Castiel standing silent near the warding circle, head tilted like he was listening to something neither Winchester could hear. The demon was a standard Crossroads type. Black eyes, cheap suit, the kind of thing they'd put down 100 times before. It lunged for Dean, and Dean let it come close enough to catch a faceful of sanctified water. The thing hissed and stumbled backward into the circle Sam had drawn that morning. Then it stopped hissing. The demon stood perfectly still. Its eyes didn't blink. Its chest didn't rise. For a moment, Dean thought maybe the trap had worked too well. That maybe they'd accidentally petrified the bastard. Then it began to dissolve. Not burn. Not explode into sulfur smoke and screaming. It just came apart pixel by pixel, like someone was holding down delete. The suit crumpled, empty. The black smoke that should have erupted skyward simply wasn't there. What remained was a thin layer of gray ash on the concrete floor and a smell like ozone and frost. "What the hell?" Dean said. Sam stared at the ash. Castiel hadn't moved. The angel's expression had gone distant, the way it did when heaven was calling, or something equally cosmic and annoying was demanding his attention. "Cass, it didn't die." Castiel's voice was flat. "It was erased." "Erased how?" "Like smited." "No." Castiel finally looked at them, and for the first time in a long time, there was something close to fear in those blue eyes. Like it was removed from the list. Sam pulled out his phone, already typing. Dean kicked at the ash, watched it scatter across the sigil they'd painted in lamb's blood 2 nights ago. The pattern was still intact. That should mean something. That should mean the demon had been contained, exorcised, sent back to hell. Instead, it was just gone. "I don't like this," Dean said. "Neither do I." Sam's voice had that tight edge it got when he was about to say something Dean wouldn't want to hear. "Because this is the 4th one this week. Different states, different hunters, same result. 4th, that we know of." Dean was about to ask what the hell kind of cosmic HR department was deleting demons when he heard the scrape of a boot on concrete coming from the direction of the library. All 3 of them turned. The man standing in the doorway looked like he'd walked out of a bar fight in East London and decided to make it everyone else's problem. Tan trench coat stained at the cuffs. White shirt open at the collar, no tie, creased like it had been slept in. Blonde hair that might have been neat a week ago. A cigarette dangling unlit from 2 fingers. He took one look at the gray ash on the floor, then at Dean, then at Sam, and finally at Castiel. His mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Right. So, you've noticed the leak. Dean raised the shotgun. Who the hell are you, and how did you get past the wards? The man didn't flinch. He slipped the cigarette behind his ear and stepped into the room like he'd been invited. His eyes swept the space with the kind of practiced efficiency Dean recognized Hunter Conman or both. Name's Constantine. John Constantine. His accent was thick British, the kind Dean associated with old BBC shows and cigarette ads. And I didn't get past your wards, mate. I came in through the loophole. Sam had gone very still. There is no loophole. This bunker is sealed against everything from demons to archangels. Is it now? Constantine glanced at Castiel. Tell him, Angel. Tell him what happens when the infrastructure starts rotting from the inside out. Castiel's jaw tightened. How do you know what I am? Same way I know your grace link is fraying at the edges. Same way I can tell your vessel there's had more tenants than a Shoreditch flat. Constantine tapped 2 fingers against his temple. I see things. Occupational hazard. Dean stepped forward, shotgun still raised. You've got 10 seconds to explain what you're doing in our home before I ventilate that trench coat. Relax, Sundance. I'm not here to steal the good silverware. Constantine moved past Dean like the gun wasn't even there, crouched beside the ash pile, and pressed his palm flat against the floor. His eyes closed. For 3 long seconds, nobody spoke. When he stood again, his expression had shifted, less cocky, more tired. This isn't a haunting. This isn't a demon purge. This is a system error. Sam lowered his phone. What kind of system? The kind that decides where you go when you die. Constantine finally looked at them properly, and there was something in his eyes that made Dean's trigger finger itch. Not danger, certainty. Heaven, hell, purgatory, it's all one big filing cabinet in it, and someone started shredding the folders. That's not possible, Sam said. Neither's walking into a bunker warded against every nasty thing in creation. But here I am. Constantine pulled the cigarette from behind his ear, didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers like a nervous habit. The afterlife's got cracks. Your demon there didn't go to hell. It went nowhere. Got deleted like a spam email. And if you lot don't fix it soon, that's where everyone's headed when they die. Straight into the void. Castiel spoke before Dean could. The empty. Constantine pointed at him with the unlit cigarette. Give the man a prize. Wait, Sam held up a hand. The empty doesn't just leak. It's not even part of the normal cosmic structure. It's primordial. Pre-creation. There's no way. There's always a way. Constantine interrupted. Especially when you've got 2 Muppets running around breaking the world every other Tuesday for the last decade. Resurrections, apocalypse reboots, cosmic power plays. You think all that doesn't leave marks? Dean's hand tightened on the shotgun. You blaming us for this? I'm saying you lot are part of the problem. Constantine's voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen. He just stated it like a fact, which somehow made it worse. But you're also the only ones who can help fix it. Lucky you. The lights overhead flickered again, This time they dimmed halfway and stayed there, casting long shadows across the library's book-lined walls. Dean felt the temperature drop 2 degrees in as many seconds. Constantine noticed. Of course he did. "That," he said quietly, "is what I'm talking about. The infrastructure's failing. Ward sigils, holy ground, it's all tied to the same power grid. And something's draining the battery. So, what do we do?" Sam's voice had shifted into research mode, the tone he used when the situation had gone from bad to academically horrifying. "If the empty is leaking into creation, how do we stop it?" Constantine smiled then. It wasn't a nice smile. "We don't stop it, mate. We reroute it. Turn the whole bloody system off and reboot it before everything gets wiped clean." He glanced at the ash on the floor one more time. "But first we're going to need a few things. A book that shouldn't exist, a gun god left lying around, and a way to make sure when we pull the plug, it stays pulled." Dean lowered the shotgun. Not because he trusted this guy, not even close, but because the alternative, doing nothing while the universe deleted itself, wasn't an option. "You got a plan? I've got the start of one." Constantine met his eyes, and there was no warmth there, no reassurance, just cold calculation. "But you're not going to like it. Try me." Constantine turned toward the hallway, hands shoved in the pockets of that stained trench coat. The empty doesn't just swallow demons. It swallows everything. Angels, souls, gods. And once it's full, it goes back to sleep. Forever. Sam's voice came from behind Dean, careful and measured. "You're talking about shutting down the afterlife. I'm talking about making sure there's no more afterlife to abuse." Constantine paused at the threshold, looked back over his shoulder. No heaven, no hell, no second chances. Just one life, one death, and then nothing. Clean slate. Dean felt something cold settle in his gut. That's not fixing the system. That's burning it down. Yeah. Constantine's expression didn't change. But at least it won't be Chuck's system anymore. He walked out into the hallway and the lights followed him, brightening slightly where he passed. Dean and Sam exchanged a look. Castiel stood frozen, staring at the empty doorway, like he'd just watched something sacred catch fire. "We're not doing this," Dean said. Sam didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than Dean wanted it to be. "We might not have a choice." The radio on the table crackled to life. No station, no signal. Just static that sounded almost like breathing. Then it cut out. Dean looked at the gray ash on the floor, at the wards that had stopped working, at his brother's face. Damn it! Somewhere in the bunker, a door closed. Constantine was already gone, and the first domino had already fallen. The world was coming undone. They just didn't know how fast yet. The morgue in Cedar Rapids smelled like industrial cleaner, and something underneath it that no amount of bleach could touch. Sam pushed through the double doors first, Dean half a step behind Constantine, trailing like he'd been invited, but wasn't particularly interested in showing up on time. The medical examiner looked up from her desk, reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She was younger than Sam expected, tired in the way people got when their job involved counting the dead. "You're the CDC?" She didn't sound convinced. Sam pulled out the fake ID, let her look at it long enough to seem legitimate. "We're following up on the reported anomalies. Temperature irregularities, tissue degradation patterns." "Right." She closed the file she'd been reading and stood. "Because that's normal. Dean gave her his best reassuring smile, the one that usually worked on coroners and bartenders. "We just need to take a look at the remains. Won't take long." She led them down a hallway that felt two bright fluorescent lights humming overhead in a way that made Sam's teeth ache. Constantine hadn't said a word since they'd left the bunker 3 hours ago. He just walked, hands in his coat pockets, eyes tracking things Sam couldn't see. The body was in drawer 7. John Kowalski, age 42, died of a heart attack in his sleep 2 nights ago. No history of heart disease, no drugs in his system, no reason he should be dead. The medical examiner pulled back the sheet. Sam had seen a lot of corpses. This one looked wrong in a way he couldn't immediately name. The skin was too pale, but not quite gray. The features were slack, but not quite peaceful. It was like looking at a photograph of a person instead of the person themselves. "Temperature's been dropping since he came in," the examiner said. "We've had to move him twice. He's colder than the cooler." Dean leaned closer, frowned. "How cold?" 34 degrees, and falling. Constantine moved past them without asking permission, pressed 2 fingers against the dead man's forehead, held them there for 5 long seconds. When he pulled back, his expression hadn't changed, but something in his posture had tightened. "How many more like this?" His voice was flat. The examiner glanced at Sam, then back to Constantine. 3 in the last week, all sudden, all unexplained. "And the funerals?" 2 so far, normal services. Bereaved say anything unusual? Feeling watched, cold spots, dreams? She hesitated. One widow mentioned she couldn't feel him anymore, said it was like he'd never existed. She paused. "I thought it was just grief." Constantine nodded once, stepped back from the body. "Right, we're done here." Dean waited until they were back in the Impala before he spoke. "So, heart attack guy. What did you see that we didn't?" Constantine lit a cigarette, cracked the window. "Nothing. Nothing. Exactly." He exhaled smoke into the Iowa afternoon. "No residue, no echo. Man died and there's nothing left but meat." Sam turned in the passenger seat. "You mean no soul signature?" "I mean no anything. Heaven doesn't log him. Hell doesn't want him. Purgatory wouldn't know what to do with him. He's just gone." Dean's hands tightened on the wheel. "People don't just disappear when they die. There's always something. Reaper shows up, takes them wherever they're supposed to go." "Yeah. When's the last time you actually saw that happen?" Constantine flicked ash out the window. "System's been running on autopilot for so long, nobody checks if the gears still turn." The Impala's engine rumbled beneath them, steady and familiar. Sam stared out at the empty road ahead, mind already cataloging patterns. 4 deaths in 1 week. No supernatural markers, no afterlife trail. "We need to cross-reference," Sam said. "Check Hunter Network's obituaries, anything that fits the profile." "Already did." Constantine pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat, handed it forward. 63 that fit the pattern, if the pattern's right. Probably more I've missed." The paper was covered in Constantine's handwriting, cramped and precise. Cities, dates, names. Sam scanned the list, felt something cold settle in his chest. "These are all over the country. All over the world, actually. But I narrowed it to your backyard." Dean glanced at the paper back to the road. 63 people just vanishing into nowhere. And what nobody noticed. People die every day, mate. Most of the time, nobody's checking the cosmic receipts. Constantine took another drag. But now someone is. And the ledger's coming up short. Back at the bunker, Castiel was standing exactly where they'd left him 6 hours ago. He didn't turn when they walked in, just kept staring at the wall where one of the old warding sigils had been carved into the concrete 70 years ago. "Cass," Sam set his laptop down on the table. "You okay?" The angel's response came slowly, like he was translating from a language he'd forgotten. "The warding. It's changing." Dean moved closer. "Changing how?" "Fading, no." Castiel tilted his head. "Draining, like something is drinking the intention out of it." Constantine stepped past them, ran his hand along the carved symbol. His fingers came away dusty. "How long's this been active?" "Since 1958, Sam said. Men of letters built this place with triple-layer protections, angelic, demonic, everything in between. And now it's dying." Constantine wiped his hand on his coat. "Because the thing it's meant to keep out is already in the walls." Castiel finally turned. His eyes looked darker than usual, or maybe it was just the light. "You're saying the empty is here?" "I'm saying the empty is everywhere. Just most people can't tell the difference between silence and the void." Constantine pulled out his cigarette pack, thought better of it, shoved it back in his pocket. "Your wards worked fine when there was a clear line between this world and that one. But the line's getting thin. And every time something crosses back from dead to alive, it gets thinner." Dean's jaw tightened. "You talking about us?" "I'm talking about anyone who's cheated the Reaper more than once." Constantine met his gaze without flinching. "How many times you boys been dead, 3-4? "We came back for a reason." "Yeah, and every time you did, you tore a little hole in the fabric. Added up over enough resurrections, enough apocalypses, enough cosmic tantrums, and eventually the whole thing starts to unravel." Constantine moved to the map table, spread his hands across the surface. "This isn't about blame. It's about structural damage." Sam opened his laptop, pulled up the Hunter Network database. "If what you're saying is true, we should see acceleration, more incidents as the barrier weakens." "You will." Constantine didn't look up. "Already starting. Give it another month, maybe less, and you'll have people dying without afterlives in every city on the planet." The bunker's lights flickered. Just once. But it was enough. Castiel's hand went to his chest again, that same unconscious gesture from yesterday. Sam noticed. So did Dean. "Cass, I can't hear heaven." The angel's voice was steady, but something beneath it wasn't. "It's not that they're not speaking. It's that there's nothing to hear. Like the frequency's been cut." Constantine's expression shifted just slightly. "How long since you arrived?" Castiel looked at him. "Every hour it gets quieter." "That's not me, Angel. That's the leak." Constantine finally met the angel's eyes, and for the first time since he'd walked into the bunker, something like concern flickered across his face. "You're tied to the system. When it fails, you feel it first." "Basha," Dean stepped between them. "Then we fix it. Sam, start pulling every Men of Letters file on Primordial Void's pre-creation entities. Anything that mentions silence or emptiness. Cass, you reach out to any angels who'll still talk to us. Someone up there has to know what's happening." "And what are you gonna do?" Constantine asked. "What I always do." Dean's voice had gone hard. "Find the thing that's killing people and put it down. Can't kill the void mate. It's not a monster. It's an absence." Constantine pulled out the cigarette again. This time he lit it despite Dean's glare. "But you can plug the holes. Stop the bleeding before the patient goes into shock." Sam looked up from his laptop. You have a way to do that? It wasn't a question. Constantine exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. I've got theories. Needs testing. What kind of testing? Dean's hand had drifted toward his belt, where the knife usually sat. The kind where we find out what's still working and what's already gone. Constantine moved toward the door, paused. There's a graveyard about 30 miles north. Old one. Pre-colonial. Some of the dead there have been in the ground so long they've got roots. If the empty's leaking, they'll show signs first. Signs like what? Sam asked. Like waking up. The graveyard smelled like rain and rot. The kind of place where the trees grew crooked and the stones leaned at angles that suggested the earth beneath wasn't quite settled. Constantine walked between the graves slowly, not reading the names, just listening. Dean watched him crouch beside a marker, so old the letters had worn away to suggestions. The Brit pressed his palm flat against the grass, closed his eyes. 30 seconds passed. Well, Dean kept his voice low, though he couldn't say why. Constantine stood brushed dirt from his hand. It's louder than last time. Last time you did what exactly? Check the seals on reality. Constantine moved to another grave, older, smaller. There are places where the world is thin, where what's buried doesn't stay buried because the rules get fuzzy. Usually you need a ritual, a sacrifice, something to punch through. But when the walls are already cracking... He trailed off, pressed his hand down again. This time the grass beneath his palm turned gray. Not dead. Not wilted. Just gray, like someone had drained the color out 1 pixel at a time. Castiel knelt beside it, touched the affected area. His fingers jerked back like he'd been burned, though there was no mark. That's not decay. No. Constantine's voice had gone quiet. That's deletion. Sam pulled out his phone, took a photo of the gray patch. This is what happened to the demon. And the people in Cedar Rapids. Give or take. Constantine stood, looked around at the other graves. It starts at the edges. The forgotten places. The things nobody's paying attention to. Then it spreads. Dean felt the temperature drop 2 degrees. How fast? Constantine didn't answer right away. He lit another cigarette even though he was still holding the first one. Realized his mistake, dropped the unlit one back in the pack. Fast enough that we're having this conversation instead of me handling it myself. That was the first time Constantine had admitted he couldn't do this alone. Dean almost respected him for it. Almost. So, what's the play? Dean asked. Constantine looked at the gray patch again. We need to understand the rules. What's being erased, what isn't? Find the pattern. Once I know the grammar, I can write the counterspell. And if there's no pattern? Sam's researcher voice had kicked in the one that meant he was already 3 steps ahead. If this is just entropy, the system breaking down because it's old and overused, then we're fucked. Constantine dropped the cigarette, ground it out with his heel. But I don't think it's random. The empty doesn't want, doesn't think. It just is. Something's making it move. Something's giving it direction. Castiel stood slowly. The shadow. Constantine nodded. Or whatever passes for consciousness in a place that predates consciousness. The drive back to the bunker was quiet. Sam typed notes on his phone. Dean gripped the wheel tighter than necessary. Castiel stared out the window at passing fields, and every few miles his eyes would lose focus for just a second before snapping back. Constantine smoked, and said nothing. They were 15 miles out when the radio died. Not static, not interference, just silence, sudden and complete. Dean hit the dash. "Come on." Nothing. Sam checked his phone. No signal. The Impala's engine kept running, but the sound seemed muffled now, like they were driving through cotton. Dean eased off the gas, heart rate picking up for reasons he couldn't name. "This normal—" He glanced at Constantine in the rear view. No. Constantine was leaning forward, staring at the road ahead. "Pull over." "Why?" "Because we're in it." Dean pulled onto the shoulder. The moment the car stopped, the silence became absolute. No wind, no birds, no distant highway noise. It was like someone had pressed mute on the entire world. They got out slowly. The air felt heavy, thick, wrong in a way Dean's hindbrain was screaming about. 20 feet ahead, the road looked normal. 20 feet behind, same thing. But right here, in this exact spot, everything was gray. Not dark, not shadowed. Gray, flat, two-dimensional. "Don't move," Constantine said. "What is this?" Sam's voice sounded muffled, like he was speaking through a pillow. "Thin spot." Constantine pulled something from his pocket, a piece of chalk, yellow and old. He drew a quick circle on the asphalt around their feet. Added 3 symbols Sam didn't recognize. The moment he closed the circle, the pressure eased. Just slightly. "We're standing on a crack," Constantine said. "A place where the empty is bleeding through. If we'd kept driving, the car would have just stopped existing, along with everyone in it." Dean watched the gray patch ahead, then behind. "How many of these are there?" Constantine met his eyes. "Not many. Yet." He paused. "Give it time." Castiel had moved to the edge of the circle, staring at the gray. "I can feel it. The absence. It's not evil. It's not anything. It's just—" He stopped, struggled for the word. "Quiet." "Yeah." Constantine pocketed the chalk. "And it's getting louder." They stood there for another minute, watching the gray patch pulse like something breathing. Then Constantine broke the circle with his heel, and they got back in the car. Nobody spoke for 5 miles. When they finally reached the bunker, the lights were dimmer than they'd been that morning. The wards on the door had faded enough that Dean could barely see them. Sam went straight for the library. Dean headed for the armory, out of habit, even though guns wouldn't help. Castiel stood in the center of the war room, head tilted, listening to nothing. Constantine leaned against the map table and watched the angels slowly come apart. "How long do I have?" Castiel asked without turning around. Constantine considered lying, decided against it. Hard to say. Angels are complicated. Part of you exists in multiple planes. When those planes start failing, you'll feel it in pieces. Will it hurt? Probably. Castiel nodded once. Good. Constantine almost asked why that was good, then decided he didn't want to know. He'd met enough martyrs to recognize the look. Sam emerged from the library carrying a stack of files that looked older than the bunker itself. "I found something." Men of letters documented a similar event in 1348. They called it the Silence, lasted 3 weeks. Ended when... He stopped, flipped through pages. Ended when it didn't. There's just a gap in the records. Like whoever was writing it disappeared mid-sentence. "Cheerful," Dean muttered. "There's a note in the margin." Sam squinted at the faded handwriting. In Latin, roughly translates to "the void does not hunger, but it remembers being full." Constantine's cigarette had burned down to the filter without him noticing. He dropped it immediately, reached for another. That's it. That's the pattern. Constantine's eyes had gone sharp, calculating. The empty existed before anything else. Before God, before creation, before the concept of existence. It was everything because there was nothing else to be. Then creation happened, and suddenly it wasn't everything anymore. It was just empty. You're saying it wants to go back, Sam said slowly. I'm saying it never wanted anything. Wants are for things that exist. But if something's been directing it, giving it purpose. Constantine trailed off, mind clearly 3 steps ahead of his mouth. Dean stepped forward. Directing it, how? Constantine looked at all 3 of them, hunter, researcher, angel, and made a decision. Someone's been opening doors, not accidentally, not through resurrection or cosmic fuck-ups. Constantine trailed off, mind clearly 3 steps ahead of his mouth. This doesn't feel random. Who? Dean's voice had gone flat. Dangerous. Constantine lit the new cigarette, took a long drag. That's the question in it. The bunker's lights flickered again. This time they stayed dim. Castiel's eyes lost focus. Came back. Lost focus again. And somewhere in the walls, something that sounded almost like breathing started to whisper. The safe house was 3 hours north, buried in the woods, where the trees grew too close together and the GPS gave up halfway in. Sam navigated by the coordinates Constantine had scrawled on a napkin, numbers that looked older than they should be. Whose place is this? Dean kept his hands on the wheel, watching the dirt road narrow ahead. Someone who owes me. Constantine's tone suggested the conversation was over. It wasn't. Someone who owes you what? Dean pressed. A favor, several actually. Constantine flicked ash out the window. She's not going to be happy to see me. Sam glanced back from the passenger seat. She, witch, Scottish, mean as a snake and twice as clever. Constantine stubbed out the smoke on his boot heel. But she's got something we need. Dean's jaw set. The Book of the Damned. Constantine didn't confirm or deny, just stared out at the passing trees like they were personally offensive. The house appeared suddenly almost aggressive in how it materialized between one turn and the next. 2 stories, wood gone gray with age windows that reflected wrong in the afternoon light. The wards around the property made Sam's teeth ache before they'd even left the car. She knows we're here, Castiel said from the back seat. His voice had gotten quieter over the last day, like speaking took more effort than it should. Course she does. Constantine got outstretched, surveyed the house with the expression of a man calculating odds he didn't like. Right. Sam, you're with me. Dean, Cass, stay in the car unless things go sideways. Dean's hand was already on the door. Like hell. She doesn't like crowds, and she especially doesn't like angels. Constantine met Castiel's gaze. No offense, mate. None taken. Cass settled back against the seat, but his eyes stayed fixed on the house like he could see through the walls. Maybe he could. Be careful. The wards here are old and angry. Sam followed Constantine up the porch steps, noting the way the wood didn't creak under their weight. Magic, probably. Or just very good carpentry. With Constantine, it was hard to tell. The door opened before they knocked. The woman standing in the frame was exactly what Sam had pictured, and nothing like it at the same time. Red hair going to copper in the dying light. Eyes that assessed them both in under a second and found them wanting. Expensive coat over what looked like silk, all of it somehow immaculate despite the woods and isolation. John Constantine. Her accent was thick Scottish burr wrapped around each syllable like a threat. I thought I told you to sod off and die. You did? Didn't take. Constantine smiled, the kind that had no warmth in it. Hello, Rowena. Her expression didn't shift. What do you want? To borrow something? No. You haven't heard what yet. Don't need to. She started to close the door. Constantine put his boot in the gap. The empty's leaking. Souls are disappearing. Give it another month and the afterlife collapses entirely. He said it like he was discussing the weather. Including yours? Rowena's fingers tightened on the doorframe. That's not possible. Is now. Constantine glanced past her into the house. And I'm betting you've noticed. Spells taking longer, wards needing maintenance, the power grid's failing love. All of it. For 3 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Rowena stepped back and opened the door wide. 10 minutes. And you touch nothing. The interior was what Sam expected. Candles, books, dried herbs hanging from rafters. What he didn't expect was the organization. Everything had a place. Everything was labeled in tight, precise handwriting. This wasn't a witch's lair. This was a laboratory. The book's not for sale, Rowena said, leading them to what might have been a living room in another life. Now it was just shelves and tables covered in artifacts that made Sam's skin crawl. Or loan, or barter. Good thing I'm not asking permission. Constantine surveyed the room with professional interest. I'm offering you a way out. Out of what? The endgame. When the system fails, where do you think witches go? No hell to bargain with. No deals to cut. Just the void. He met her stare without flinching. I can make sure that doesn't happen. But I need the book. Rowena laughed sharp and cold. You want to fix the cosmic order with a grimoire that's killed everyone who's tried to use it? That's your plan. Part of it. Constantine pulled out a cigarette, didn't light it. The book's got the language. Pre-Enochian. Older than angels. The kind of syntax that can bend rules that aren't supposed to bend. And what makes you think you can read it without losing your mind? I've already lost my mind, several times. Constantine gestured at Sam. He hasn't. He's read it before. Translated pieces. Didn't go completely mad. Sam felt Rowena's attention shift to him like a weight. Samuel Winchester. Yes, I know you. You and your brother have a habit of breaking things. We're trying to fix it this time, Sam said. Are you... She moved to one of the tables, fingers trailing across something that looked like bone. Or are you helping him break it differently? That was the question, wasn't it? Constantine spoke before Sam could. I need 3 pages. Chapters on binding primordial forces. You let me copy them, I'm gone in an hour. And if I refuse, then in a month, maybe less, we're all deleted like bad code. Constantine's voice had gone flat. You me every soul that's ever made a deal or cast a spell or died. Hoping for something better. Gone. Not to heaven, not to hell. Just gone. Rowena studied him for a long moment. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. Not warmer. Just calculating. You're telling the truth. Unfortunately. And this plan of yours, the one you're not explaining. She tilted her head. How many people die? Less than if I do nothing. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Constantine met her gaze, and for the first time since they'd arrived, something like respect flickered between them. Do we have a deal? Another pause. Then Rowena moved to a locked cabinet in the corner, pulled out a key that looked like it was made from blackthorn, and opened the doors. The Book of the Damned sat on the middle shelf like it was waiting. It was smaller than Sam remembered. Leather covers stained dark with things he didn't want to think about. Pages that seemed to shift even when the book was still. Just being in the same room with it made his head ache. 1 hour, Rowena said. You read, you copy, you leave. Touch anything else, and I'll bind your soul to this house for eternity. Fair. Constantine approached the book like a man approaching a wild animal. Slow, respectful. He opened it to a page near the middle, read for 10 seconds, and Sam watched his expression carefully, not change. Sam. Paper. Now. Sam pulled out the notebook he'd brought, handed it over. Constantine began copying symbols that hurt to look at hand steady, despite the way the ink seemed to writhe on the page. Outside, Dean was trying not to pace. The Impala felt smaller than usual, the trees pressing in on all sides. Cass sat in the passenger's seat, head tilted back, eyes closed. You okay? Dean asked. No. Cass didn't open his eyes. The wards around this place are designed to repel divine presence. It's like standing in acid rain. We can go back to the car. We're already in the car. I meant farther away. It wouldn't help. Cass finally opened his eyes, and they looked dimmer than they should. The entire world is becoming hostile to angels. Not actively. Just structurally. Like the framework is rejecting us. Dean's fingers drummed against the steering wheel. Constantine said this would get worse. He was right. Cass breathed slowly, deliberately. When the system fails completely, angels will fail with it. We're part of the machinery. Then we fix the machinery. Dean. Cass turned to face him. What if fixing it means turning it off? Dean didn't have an answer for that. Inside, Constantine finished copying the 3rd page and closed the book with more care than Sam had seen him handle anything. His hand was shaking. Just slightly, but it was there. Done. Rowena watched from across the room, arms crossed. For now. Constantine pocketed the papers, stepped back from the cabinet. One more thing. No. There was a gun. God's gun. The equalizer. Constantine's tone had gone careful. Chuck had it. Used it once, then it disappeared. You know where it is. Rowena's expression froze. That weapon doesn't exist anymore. It exists. It's just been written out of the story. Constantine pulled out another cigarette. This time he lit it despite being indoors. But the residue is still there. Quantum signature. I need to trace it. Why? Because I need to establish a connection, a link to the author. He exhaled smoke. Can't rewrite the book if I can't find the pen. That's insane. It's also necessary. Constantine met her stare. Help me or don't. But if you don't remember this conversation when you're being erased. Rowena stared at him for a long time. Then she moved to another shelf, pulled down a small wooden box, and opened it. Inside was what looked like a bullet casing. Just one, tarnished copper, nothing special, except Sam could feel the weight of it from across the room. This was in Chuck's workshop when he abandoned it. Rowena held it up to the light. It's all that's left. The gun itself was unmade, but the intention remains. Constantine took it carefully, held it up, closed his eyes. Whatever he was sensing, Sam couldn't feel it. But the way Constantine's jaw tightened suggested it wasn't pleasant. This'll work. He pocketed the casing. Thank you. Don't thank me. Rowena closed the box with a snap. You're building something terrible. I can smell it on you. Yeah. Constantine headed for the door. But it's less terrible than the alternative. They were halfway back to the car when Sam finally spoke. You're not telling us everything. Constantine kept walking. Never do. Those pages from the book, they weren't just about binding primordial forces. Sam had caught glimpses of the symbols, recognized patterns from his own research. They were about contracts, cosmic contracts. Smart lad. So what are you actually planning? Constantine stopped, turned to face him. The cigarette had burned down to ash. He dropped it, ground it out with his heel. I'm planning to make God sign his own death warrant. In triplicate. With witnesses. He said it like he was ordering coffee. And you and your brother are going to be the notaries. Sam felt his pulse pick up. We didn't agree to that. You will. Constantine started walking again. Because by the time I ask, you won't have a choice. The drive back was silent. Dean drove, Sam stared out the window, Cass breathed like it hurt. Constantine sat in the back and studied the bullet casing like it might tell him secrets. It was Sam who broke the silence 20 miles in. Those symbols you copied? They're not just for binding. They're for transference. Constantine didn't deny it. You're not going to stop the empty. You're going to redirect it. Give the man a prize. Dean's hands tightened on the wheel, then relaxed, forcing himself to stay calm. Redirect it where... everywhere. Constantine pocketed the casing. The system's broken. Can't be fixed. Can only be replaced. With what? Sam's voice had gone cold. With nothing. Constantine met his gaze in the rearview mirror. No more heaven. No more hell. No more resurrection, no more deals, no more second chances. Just one life, one death, and then silence. Clean slate. The Impala swerved slightly before Dean corrected. That's not fixing the system. That's genocide. It's mercy. Constantine's voice didn't rise. What do you think happens when the empty finishes leaking? Everyone who dies doesn't go anywhere. They just stop. At least my way, it's organized. Controlled. Nobody suffers. Nobody exists, Sam said. Exactly. Constantine lit another cigarette. No existence means no pain. No cosmic power plays. No Chuck rewriting reality every time he gets bored. Just an ending that actually sticks. Castiel spoke from the passenger seat, voice barely above a whisper. You're going to kill the afterlife. I'm going to put it to sleep. Constantine corrected. There's a difference. Not to the people who die, Dean snarled. No, but there is to the people who don't come back. Constantine exhaled smoke. How many times have you two died? How many people have you dragged back because you couldn't let go? The system doesn't work because people like you keep breaking it. So your solution is to make sure nobody can break it by making sure there's nothing left to break, Sam said. Now you're getting it. The bunker's lights were dying when they arrived. Not flickering anymore, just dim, like batteries running low. The wards on the door had faded to suggestions. Sam could barely see them even when he knew where to look. They gathered in the war room, Dean, Sam, Cass, Constantine, and for a long minute nobody spoke. The silence was heavy, expectant. Waiting for someone to make the decision they'd all been avoiding. We're not doing this, Dean said finally. You are? Constantine spread the copied pages on the map table. The symbols seemed to move in the low light, writhing like living things. Because I already started? Sam stared at the papers. What did you do? Read the book in a house warded against divine interference. Created a resonance, a tuning fork. Constantine tapped one of the symbols. The empty's listening now. It knows something's being built. Castiel stood abruptly, hand going to his chest. I can feel it. Course you can. You're tied to heaven. Heaven's tied to the machine. Machine's starting to shut down. Constantine gathered the papers. Don't worry, won't kill you. Just disconnect you. Make you human. You did this without asking. Sam's voice had gone dangerous. I did it so you'd understand there's no going back. Constantine met his gaze without flinching. The ritual started. The empty's been invoked. All that's left is directing where it goes. And for that, I need two things. What things? Dean's hand had drifted toward where his gun usually sat. Death's scythe, and a quantum link to God. Constantine smiled, but there was no humor in it. The good news is, I know how to get both. The bad news is, you're going to hate every second of it. The bunker's lights dimmed further. Somewhere in the walls, that breathing sound started again. Closer now. Louder. And in the corner of the room, where nothing should be a patch of gray, began to spread across the concrete floor. It's already here, Castiel said quietly. Constantine watched the gray spread with something that might have been satisfaction, or might have been resignation. Yeah. Right on schedule. Sam stared at the symbols on the pages, at the gray eating the floor, at Constantine's expression that gave away nothing. You're not trying to save the world, Sam said slowly. You're trying to mercy kill it. Constantine picked up the papers, folded them carefully, slipped them inside his coat. Same thing from where I'm standing. The gray patch reached the edge of the map table and stopped. Waiting. Patient. And somewhere very far away, or maybe very close, something that had been sleeping for eons, opened one eye and smiled. The ritual room in the bunker was meant for containment. 70 years of accumulated warding carved into every surface, layers upon layers of protection, designed to keep the outside world from getting in. Constantine was about to turn it inside out. Sam watched him work from the doorway, arms crossed, face carefully neutral. The symbols Constantine was drawing weren't in any book Sam had read. They looked almost like Enochian, but wrong, inverted. Like someone had taken divine language and taught it to curse. You're going to explain what you're doing, Sam said. Not a question. Constantine didn't look up from the floor where he was using something that definitely wasn't chalk. Building a mirror. That's not an explanation. It's the only one you need right now. Constantine moved to another section of the floor, began drawing a second circle inside the first. His hands were steady, but Sam noticed the way he kept pausing between symbols like he was translating in real time. The mark of Cain was a lock. First lock, actually. Oldest one. Kept the darkness contained for eons because God understood syntax. Dean leaned against the wall near the door, arms crossed in a mirror of his brother's posture. The mark's gone. Amara's gone. What's that got to do with now? The mark's gone, but the grammar isn't. Constantine straightened, surveyed his work with a critical eye. Every lock has a structure, conditions, rules, and rules can be read. Once you read them, you can write new ones. Write them where... Sam's voice had gone careful. Wherever there's something that needs locking. Constantine pulled out the papers he'd copied from the Book of the Damned, spread them across the floor outside the circles. The empty's not a thing. It's an absence. But absences have boundaries, and boundaries can be defined. Castiel stood in the corner as far from the ritual space as he could get, while still being in the room. His eyes hadn't left the symbols on the floor. This is dangerous. Yeah. Constantine didn't argue. It is. I mean structurally dangerous. Cass took a step forward, stopped like he'd hit a wall. What you're writing, it's not just binding language. It's addressing protocol. You're trying to send a message to something that predates the concept of messages. Give the angel a prize. Constantine knelt again, began connecting the circles with lines that hurt to follow with the naked eye. But here's the thing about protocols. They're just fancy rules, and every rule implies its opposite. Sam felt something shift in his chest, a cold realization settling in. You're not trying to stop the empty. You're trying to talk to it. Not talk, address. Constantine's voice had gone distant, focused. Find the right syntax, the right grammar, and you can make anything respond. Even nothing. And what happens when nothing responds? Dean's hand had drifted toward his gun, even though guns wouldn't help here. Constantine looked up, and for the first time since they'd started, something that might have been doubt flickered across his face. We find out if I'm as clever as I think I am. The ritual took 2 hours to prepare. Constantine worked in silence, occasionally consulting the copied pages, occasionally just staring at the symbols like they might rearrange themselves if he wasn't watching. Sam and Dean took turns bringing supplies, salt iron filings, 3 different types of blood that Constantine identified with increasing discomfort. Whose blood is that last one? Dean held the vial up to the light, already not liking the answer. Someone who knew how to bleed correctly. Constantine took it, added 3 drops to specific points in the outer circle. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. By the time the sun set, the ritual space looked like a map of something that shouldn't have geography. Circles within circles, lines that connected and diverged, symbols that seemed to breathe in the low light. Constantine stood in the center, rolled up his sleeves, pulled out a knife. Wait. Sam stepped forward. You're using your own blood. Has to be someone who's touched both sides. Living and dead. Human and not. Constantine pressed the blade to his palm, without hesitation. Lucky me, I've been dead more times than I can count. The blood hit the floor, and the symbols lit up. Not glowed. Lit. Like someone had turned on lights behind them, burning from underneath. The temperature in the room dropped 15 degrees in 3 seconds. Dean's breath fogged. Constantine. Shut up. Constantine's eyes were closed, head tilted back, speaking words that Sam's brain refused to process. They weren't Latin. They weren't Enochian. They were older than both primal and cold and wrong in a way that made Sam's teeth ache. Castiel gasped, hand going to his chest. The angel's eyes went wide, pupils blown. Stop! Stop! You have to... The lights in the bunker didn't flicker. They inverted. For half a second, darkness became light, and light became darkness, and in that reversed moment, Sam saw something impossible. The walls weren't solid anymore. They were thin, translucent, and through them, pressing from every direction, was an ocean of nothing. Then the moment passed, and the lights came back, and Constantine collapsed to his knees, blood still dripping from his hand. Nobody moved for 3 long seconds. Did it work? Dean's voice cut through the silence. Constantine wiped blood from his nose with the back of his hand. Define work. Sam stared at the symbols on the floor. They weren't glowing anymore. But they weren't gone either. They'd changed, sunk into the concrete like they'd always been there, like reality had rewritten itself around them. "What did you just do?" Sam's voice was steady, but his hands weren't. "Proved a concept." Constantine stood slowly, swaying slightly. The empty has structure. It's not chaos. It's organized absence. And if it's organized, it can be addressed. Directed, rerouted. Rerouted where? That's the question I just asked. Constantine gestured at the symbols. This is a test signal, a ping. If something responds, we know the channel's open. If nothing responds, we try again with different syntax. Castiel still hadn't moved from his corner. His breathing was ragged, controlled like each inhale hurt. It responded. Everyone turned to look at him. "What?" Dean took a step toward the angel. "I felt it." Cass's eyes were unfocused, staring at something the rest of them couldn't see. "The empty. It felt the ritual, and it—" He trailed off, struggling for words. It noticed. Constantine's expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. "Good. That's good." "How is that good?" Dean's voice had risen. "Because now we know it's listening." Constantine gathered the copied pages, careful not to step on the new symbols burned into the floor. Next step is making sure it hears the right message. Sam watched Constantine pocket the papers with hands that trembled just slightly. "You knew this would happen." "I knew it might." "That's not the same thing." "No." Constantine met his gaze. "But it's close enough." The bunker's wards were weaker when they went upstairs. Not gone, just tired. Like they'd been running for years and someone had finally turned off the generator. Dean checked them 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. "They're draining." He pressed his hand against a ward that had been solid silver that morning. Now it was fading to gray. Since when? Sam pulled out his phone, checked the timestamp on a photo he'd taken that morning. Since the ritual. They found Constantine in the library, sitting at the map table with a bottle of whiskey he'd found somewhere. He wasn't drinking it, just staring at it like it might contain answers. "The wards are dying," Dean said without preamble. "Yeah." Constantine didn't look up. "Side effect." "Side effect of what?" "Of proving the void can be touched." Constantine finally met his gaze. "You open a door, even a crack, something gets through. In this case, the thing getting through is the understanding that doors exist." Sam sat down across from him. "You're saying the ritual made it worse." "I'm saying the ritual changed the rules. Before the empty was leaking passively. Background radiation. Now it knows something's reaching out, trying to establish connection." Constantine's fingers drummed once against the bottle. "It's going to push back harder." "So we just made it personal," Dean said flatly. "We made it possible." Constantine stood pace to the bookshelf back again. "You want to fix a problem first, you have to prove you can interact with it." "Well, now we can." "At what cost?" Sam's researcher voice had kicked in, the one that meant he was 3 steps ahead and not liking where the path led. "The wards are failing. Cass is barely holding on. How many more rituals before the bunker becomes a thin zone?" Constantine stopped pacing. 2, maybe 3. The honesty was somehow worse than a lie would have been. Dean's hand moved toward his gun again, dropped. "You knew this would happen. You knew the ritual would weaken everything around it." "I suspected. And you did it anyway." "Yeah." Constantine turned to face them both. because the alternative is waiting for the empty to finish leaking on its own. And when that happens, there won't be any wards left to fail. There won't be anything left at all. Sam stood slowly. You're justifying. I'm explaining. Constantine's voice didn't rise. I don't need to justify shit to you. You asked me to fix this. I'm fixing it. The fact that fixing it hurts doesn't make it wrong. It does, if you're making it worse first. Sam's voice had gone cold. How many people are going to die while you're establishing connection? Less than if I don't. Constantine met his stare without flinching. I'm not the good guy here. Never claimed to be. But I'm the only one willing to do what needs doing. Dean stepped between them before Sam could respond. Enough. Both of you. He looked at Constantine. What's the next step? Constantine pulled out the papers again, spread them on the table. The symbols looked different in the library's light. More solid, more real. I need to turn the test signal into actual protocol. A mirror lock. Something that can redirect the empty's attention from everything to one specific target. What target? Sam asked. Constantine's smile had no warmth in it. The thing that's been writing the story. The author himself. Castiel appeared in the doorway, moving slower than usual. His tie was loose shirt collar open, like even that small amount of restriction was too much. Chuck. Give the angel another prize. Constantine tapped one of the symbols. But I can't just point at God and expect the void to care. I need a direct link, a quantum connection, something that ties him to the system he built. The equalizer, Sam said slowly. Part of it. The bullet casing establishes trace, but trace isn't enough. I need active connection, blood, power, something that proves he's still part of the game he's trying to quit. Dean's expression hardened. You want us to shoot God? I want you to make him bleed. Constantine corrected. There's a difference. We're not trying to kill him. We're trying to establish jurisdiction. You can't opt out of your own creation if your creation has a legal claim on you. Sam stared at the papers, at the symbols that had rewritten themselves into the bunker's foundation, at Constantine's expression that gave nothing away. This is insane. Yeah. Constantine gathered the papers. But it's the kind of insane that might actually work. The bunker shook. Not an earthquake. Something else. A vibration that came from beneath, from inside, from everywhere at once. The lights dimmed. The wards dimmed with them. And in the ritual room downstairs, the symbols Constantine had burned into the floor began to spread. Slowly, methodically, like roots growing through concrete. Castiel's knees buckled. He caught himself on the doorframe, breathing hard. It's responding. To what? Dean was at his side in 2 steps. To the message. Cass looked up, eyes dark. Constantine asked the void a question, and the void is answering. What's it saying? Sam's voice was barely above a whisper. Castiel's next word came out like a confession. Yes. Constantine's expression shifted. Not satisfaction. Something colder, more focused. Then we're committed. To what? Dean demanded. Constantine looked at the spreading symbols at the dying wards, at Castiel, barely standing in the doorway. To seeing this through, all the way to the end. He met Dean's eyes. No matter who it costs. The bunker shook again, harder this time. And somewhere very far away, or maybe very close, something that had been sleeping for eons stretched and turned over and began very slowly to wake. In the library, one of the old books fell from its shelf. Not knocked. Just fell. Like gravity had briefly forgotten which way was down. Sam caught it before it hit the floor. The title was in Latin, something about primordial structures and the architecture of silence. He opened it to a random page. The text was gone. Not erased, just gone. Empty pages where words used to be. Constantine. Sam held up the book. The Brit looked, and for the first time since they'd met him, something like fear crossed his face. How many books? Sam scanned the shelves. 3 more had fallen. He checked them. Empty. 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 The void isn't just responding, Castiel said from the doorway. It's feeding. Constantine nodded slowly. Then we're on a clock. Whatever we're going to do, we do it fast, before there's nothing left to save. Dean looked at his brother. Sam looked back. A whole conversation passed between them in that look. Then Dean turned to Constantine. Tell us the real plan. Not the version you think we'll accept. The real one. Constantine pulled out a cigarette lit. It, despite Sam's glare, took a long drag. When he spoke, his voice was flat, factual, no embellishment. I'm going to build a mirror lock using syntax from before creation. I'm going to establish jurisdiction over Chuck by forcing him to participate in his own system. I'm going to use his quantum signature to address the empty directly. And then I'm going to give it exactly what it wants. Which is, Sam asked. Everything. Constantine exhaled smoke. The whole system. Heaven, hell, purgatory, souls, angels, demons, all of it. Gone. Returned to the void. Permanent shutdown. The silence that followed was absolute. And us. Dean's voice was barely above a whisper. Constantine met his gaze. You get to live. One life. No resurrections, no deals, no second chances. And when you die, you sleep. Forever. Just like everyone else. Sam felt something in his chest go cold. You're not saving the world. You're ending it. I'm ending the game, Constantine corrected. The world gets to keep existing. People get to keep living. They just don't get to come back. And honestly, he took another drag. Maybe that's for the best. Dean's hand went to his gun and stayed there. And what gives you the right to make that call? Nothing. Constantine's smile was bitter. But somebody has to. And you lot have been too busy playing hero to see the obvious solution. Which is that some things are supposed to end. Constantine stubbed out the cigarette. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is make sure they end clean. The bunker shook a third time, harder, longer. Somewhere in the walls, something cracked. And the symbols in the ritual room spread another inch. The town appeared between 1 mile marker and the next. Not gradually, just suddenly there, like someone had decided it needed to exist and written it into being. Dean slowed the Impala without being told. Something about the place made his instincts scream. Too perfect. Too clean. Like a movie set waiting for actors to arrive. This isn't right, Sam said from the passenger seat. No. Constantine leaned forward from the back. It's exactly right. That's the problem. Every building was precisely maintained. Every lawn precisely mowed. Even the clouds overhead moved in patterns that were just slightly too regular to be natural. Where are we? Dean kept driving slowly through streets that had no trash, no wear, no signs of actual human existence. Somewhere Chuck's been editing. Constantine's eyes tracked the buildings like he was reading text. He builds stages when he wants control. Makes the environment predictable, controllable. Castiel had gotten quieter over the last day. Now he spoke barely above a whisper. He knows we're here. Course he does. Constantine pulled out the bullet casing from his coat, held it up to the light streaming through the windshield. That's the point. Can't establish link without both parties present. Sam turned in his seat. You said this was about quantum signature, about using residue to trace connection. It is. Then why do we need to be where Chuck is? Sam's researcher tone had kicked in, the one that meant he was connecting dots he didn't like. Unless we're not just tracing, unless we're actually activating. Constantine cut him off. Yeah, the casing is the address. But to send the message, you need witnesses. People who've been written by both sides. You and your brother fit the bill. Dean's hands tightened on the wheel. You're using us. I'm using everyone. Constantine said it like stating a fact. Myself included. That's how contract law works. Everyone signs. We didn't agree to sign anything, Dean said. You did when you asked me to fix this. Constantine pocketed the casing. 3 blocks ahead. Red House. That's where he is. The house looked like every suburban home in every American drama. 2 stories, white paint, porch with a swing. The kind of place where nothing bad ever happened because the writer wouldn't allow it. Chuck was sitting on the porch steps, laptop open, typing like they weren't driving up to confront the architect of reality. He looked up as they parked. Smiled. Not warmly. Just acknowledging. Dean, Sam, Cass. His eyes moved to Constantine last. And you. Wasn't expecting you until next season. Constantine got out of the car without answering. Dean and Sam followed, keeping Constantine between them and Chuck. A tactical choice that probably meant nothing against someone who could rewrite the rules. Nice town, Constantine said, surveying the too perfect street. Very you. It serves. Chuck closed the laptop, set it aside. I'm guessing you're not here to workshop the ending. I'm here to discuss contract terms. Constantine moved closer, hands in his pockets, casual in a way that probably took effort. Specifically, the ones you didn't read when you built the system. Chuck's smile didn't fade, but something behind it shifted. I wrote the system. There are no terms I didn't read. See, that's where you're wrong. Constantine pulled out the bullet casing, held it up. You wrote the system. But systems have syntax. And syntax has rules. And rules. He closed his fist around the casing. Rules apply to everyone, including the writer. For 3 seconds, Chuck just stared. Then he laughed. Short, sharp. You think you can rules lawyer God? I think God made the mistake of playing in his own game. Constantine opened his fist. The casing was glowing, now soft blue light that shouldn't exist. The moment you used the equalizer, you established jurisdiction. You became part of the narrative. And narrative has structure. Chuck stood slowly. What did you do? Trace the bullet back to the gun. Trace the gun back to the hand. Trace the hand back to the signature. Constantine's voice stayed flat. You're not outside the story anymore, Chuck. You're a character, and characters can be bound. The air pressure changed. Not dropped. Changed. Like someone had adjusted the settings on reality. Sam felt it first. A pull behind his sternum, sharp and cold. Dean felt it half a second later, hand going to his chest like he'd been stabbed. "What?" Dean started. "Witnesses." Constantine didn't look at them. "The contract needs signatures. You two have been rewritten by Chuck more than anyone. Death, resurrection, memory choice. All of it authored. All of it documented. Makes you perfect notaries." Sam's vision doubled for a heartbeat. In one layer he saw the street. In another he saw something else. Lines of text. Code. Reality written out in syntax he couldn't read, but somehow understood. "You're using us to anchor the contract," Sam said through gritted teeth. "I'm using everyone." Constantine repeated, "Including myself. Look." He rolled up his sleeve. Words were appearing on his forearm, burning in like brand marks. Not English, not any language Sam recognized. But they meant something. Contract. Binding. Witness. Dean reached for his gun, stopped. His hand wouldn't move. Not frozen. Just edited out of that action, like the choice had been removed from the script. "Don't fight it," Constantine said quietly. "Makes it hurt more." Chuck had gone very still. His expression was hard to read, not angry, not scared, just reassessing. "You can't bind me with my own syntax. I wrote the language." "You wrote the language," Constantine agreed. "But you didn't patent it. The moment you used it to interact with creation, it became part of creation's rules. And rules once written." He opened his hand again. The casing shattered blue light spilling out like water. "Can be applied retroactively." The light hit Chuck like a physical thing. He didn't scream, didn't fall, just stood there, eyes wide, as something invisible wrapped around him, like chains made of grammar and law. "Quantum link established," Constantine said. "You're part of the system now, permanently." Chuck's hands curled into fists. "This won't work. I'm still God. I can just unmake it." Constantine shook his head. "No, because unmaking it would require you to edit the contract. And editing the contract would require you to acknowledge it exists, which means signing it, which means binding yourself tighter." He smiled without humor. "Catch-22. Beautiful, isn't it?" The pressure in Sam's chest released all at once. He gasped, doubled over, distantly aware of Dean doing the same thing beside him. When he straightened, his left hand was marked. A symbol he didn't recognize burned into his palm. Dean's right hand matched. "What did you do to us?" Dean's voice was dangerous. "Made you witnesses." Constantine showed his own hand. Same symbol, but more complex. "You're part of the contract now. So am I. So is he." He gestured at Chuck. "All of us bound by the same syntax. The difference is, I wrote the terms. He just has to follow them." Chuck stared at his own hands. No marks. But something in his expression suggested he could feel it anyway. The binding, the limitation. "What are the terms?" His voice was careful now, measured. Constantine pulled out the papers from the Book of the Damned, now covered in his own annotations. "You have two choices. Keep trying to write the ending your way and watch the empty delete everything piece by piece, or..." He folded the papers, slipped them back in his coat. "Accept the shutdown. Let the system fail clean instead of messy." "That's not a choice," Chuck said. "That's extortion. That's contract law." Constantine corrected. "You're bound to the system. The system's failing. You can either fail with it or authorize a controlled demolition. Either way, the story ends. I'm just giving you the option to end it without torturing everyone in the epilogue." Sam felt something shift in his chest again. Not pain. Information. Like the contract was feeding him data he shouldn't have access to. He saw patterns, timelines, the shape of what Constantine was actually building. "You're not giving him a choice," Sam said slowly. "You're making him pick which gun to his head." Smart lad. Constantine didn't deny it. "But that's one more choice than the empty would give him." Castiel had stayed by the car. Leaning against it like standing took effort. Now he spoke, voice carrying despite the whisper. "The link is pulling. I can feel it. Heaven's architecture is bending." Constantine nodded once. "That's the contract propagating, spreading up the chain of authority. Give it an hour, every angel in existence will feel the binding." "You're rewriting divine law," Chuck said. Not a question, just acknowledging what was happening. "I'm enforcing it." Constantine met his stare. "You wrote yourself into the world. The world has rules about debt, obligation, consequence. You're not exempt just because you signed the founding documents." Chuck's expression was unreadable. Then he laughed. Short, bitter. "You know what's funny? I actually like this. It's clever, nasty. The kind of ending I'd write if I was feeling mean." He sat back down on the porch steps. "But you're missing something." "What's that?" "You can bind me to the system. You can establish jurisdiction. But the quantum link goes both ways." Chuck's smile returned sharper now. "If I'm bound to you, you're bound to me. And that means I can see what you're planning. Every detail, every contingency, every sacrifice you're too scared to tell them about." Constantine's expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. "That's right," Chuck said. "The endgame requires a fail-safe. Someone to hold the door shut from the inside. Someone to stay behind when the empty floods the system." He looked at Sam and Dean. "He didn't mention that part, did he?" Dean's hand went back to his gun. This time it moved. "Is that true?" Constantine lit a cigarette, took a long drag before answering. "Yeah. And you were going to tell us when." Sam's voice had gone cold. "When it was too late to back out." Constantine exhaled smoke. "Because if I told you now, you'd try to stop me. Or worse, you'd try to take my place, and you can't. The fail-safe has to be someone who understands the syntax. Someone who can hold the lock closed even when the void is screaming. That's me. Nobody else." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Dean pulled the gun. "We're done. Get in the car." "Can't." Constantine gestured at the mark on his hand. "Contract's active. I stop now, the link collapses. Chuck goes back to being outside the system. Empty wins by default." "Then we find another way," Sam said. "There is no other way." Constantine's voice stayed flat. "I spent 8 months looking. This is it. The only solution that doesn't end with everything deleted." Chuck watched them like he was taking notes for the next draft. "Here's the fun part. Even if you stop him now, the damage is done. The link's established. Heaven's compromised. The empty's already responding. You're in the endgame whether you like it or not." Dean kept the gun trained on Constantine. "So what we just let you sacrifice yourself, die some noble death to save the universe?" "Nothing noble about it." Constantine dropped the cigarette, crushed it with his heel. "I'm not dying. I'm getting locked in a room with no doors, forever, alone, in silence, making sure nobody can ever resurrect anything again." He met Dean's stare. "But at least everyone else gets to stay dead instead of being erased." That's not nobility. That's arithmetic. Castiel pushed off from the car, took 3 steps toward them before his knees buckled. Sam caught him before he hit the ground. Cass. The angel's eyes were unfocused pupils blown. The grace link is severing. I can feel heaven disconnecting. Not slowly. Now. Constantine checked his watch. Faster than expected. The contract's propagating at double speed. Because I'm helping it. Chuck stood stretched like he'd been sitting too long. You wanted to bind me, fine. I'm bound. But I'm not going quietly. He smiled at Constantine. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you're planning. Every detail. Every cost. Let's see how long your volunteers last when they know the real price. The air shimmered. Not heat distortion. Something else. Like reality was updating in real time. And suddenly everyone knew. Not told. Knew. The information just appeared in their heads, complete and undeniable. The mirror lock. The empty flood. The shutdown of all afterlife. And Constantine alone in the dark, holding the door shut for eternity while everyone else got to exist in ignorance. Sam felt it settle into his mind like a file being downloaded. Every contingency, every sacrifice, every person who'd die in the transition because the shutdown wouldn't be clean. Dean felt it too. His hand holding the gun started shaking. That's the plan, Chuck said pleasantly. That's what your friend here has been building toward. Total, universal amnesia. No memory of the divine. No evidence it ever existed. Just humans living and dying with nothing waiting after. He looked at Constantine, and you alone in the void, making sure nobody ever opens that door again. Constantine's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. So, Chuck spread his hands. Still want to see this through? Dean lowered the gun, slowly. Not because he agreed. Just because shooting Constantine wouldn't fix anything. How long? Dean asked. Constantine knew what he meant. Once I activate the mirror lock, 3 days. Maybe 4. Then the flood starts. After that, he shrugged. However long it takes for everyone to die and not come back. People are going to die during the shutdown, Sam said. You knew that? Yeah. How many? Less than if I don't. Constantine met his gaze. I'm not asking you to like it. I'm asking you to let me finish. Castiel straightened in Sam's arms, breathing ragged but steady. You should have told us. Would it have changed anything? Constantine asked. The angel didn't answer. Chuck clapped his hands, once sharp sound cutting through the tension. Well, this has been fun. Existentially horrifying, but fun. He picked up his laptop. I'd love to stay and workshop the moral implications, but I've got a schedule. The link's active, contract's binding. You win that round. His smile was sharp. But winning rounds isn't the same as winning wars. See you at the finale. He walked into the house and closed the door. And the town started to fade, not slowly. All at once. Buildings becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone. Like someone had hit delete on the entire construct. Get in the car, Russ, Dean said. Now. They piled in as the street beneath them started to disappear. Dean hit the gas, and the Impala peeled out racing ahead of the deletion spreading from Chuck's house like a virus. They made it 3 blocks before the road reformed behind them, solid and normal, and leading back to the highway they'd left an hour ago. Nobody spoke for 10 miles. Then Sam broke the silence. We need Death's scythe. Constantine looked at him in the rearview mirror. Yeah. Because the shutdown requires something that can cut resurrection loops, Sam continued. Something that can make death permanent. Give the man his prize.
Aye.
And you already know where it is. Constantine didn't answer. Didn't need to. Dean's voice was flat. So we go get Death's attention, make a deal. Get the scythe. And then what, hand you the keys to universal oblivion? Pretty much? Constantine lit another cigarette. Unless you've got a better plan that doesn't involve everyone getting deleted. Dean didn't. The drive back to the bunker was silent. Castiel sat in the back, eyes closed, barely breathing. The mark on Sam's hand burned faintly. Dean's matched. And somewhere ahead, or maybe behind, or maybe everywhere at once, death was waiting. Because Constantine had just made God mortal, and mortality required oversight. The contract was written. The witnesses were bound. The quantum link hummed with information flowing both ways. Constantine reading Chuck's nature, Chuck reading Constantine's plan. It was too late to stop. It had been too late the moment Constantine walked into the bunker. All that was left was seeing it through, or watching it fail. And neither option ended well. The library appeared without transition. One moment they were in the bunker's war room, the next they were somewhere else. Not teleported, not moved. Just relocated like reality had decided they belonged in a different place. Sam's hand went to his gun before his brain caught up. The library stretched in every direction, shelves reaching toward a ceiling that might not exist. Books lined the walls in perfect order, spines labeled with names, dates, causes. Every death that had ever happened cataloged and filed. And at the center of it all, sitting at a desk that looked older than time, was Death. She didn't look up when they arrived, just kept writing in a ledger fountain pen moving with mechanical precision. The scratch of ink on paper was the only sound. Constantine was the first to speak. Billy? John. Still didn't look up. You're early? Am I? By 3 months. She turned a page, kept writing. You weren't supposed to die until spring. Not here to die, here to borrow. That made her pause. The pen stopped. She set it down carefully, precisely aligned with the edge of the desk. When she finally looked up, her expression was exactly what Sam had expected, complete, absolute neutrality. No. You haven't heard what yet. Don't need to. Billy stood, moved to one of the shelves, ran a finger along the spines. You want my scythe? The answer is no. Constantine pulled out his cigarette pack, thought better of it, put it away. Your schedule's backing up. I'm aware. Souls aren't arriving. Reapers can't collect. The entire death infrastructure is clogging like a drain full of hair. Constantine took 3 steps forward. And it's only going to get worse. Billy selected a book, opened it, scanned a page. Also aware. Dean shifted his weight, uncomfortable, in a way he rarely showed. Being in Death's library did that. Made you remember every time you should have stayed dead. So fix it, Dean said. Billy's eyes moved to him. Can't. Why not? Because the problem isn't death. It's what comes after. She closed the book with a snap. The afterlife is collapsing. Heaven's losing cohesion. Hell's barely functioning. Purgatory's starting to leak. None of that is my jurisdiction. But this is, Constantine gestured at the library. Transition. The moment between. That's all yours? It was. Billy returned the book to its shelf with a sound like a coffin closing. Now that moment's getting longer. People die, but they don't arrive. They're stuck in the in-between, and I can't move them forward because there's nowhere for them to go. Sam's researcher brain kicked in despite the circumstances. How many? 37,000. Billy said it like she was reading a grocery list. As of 2 hours ago. The number increases by roughly 40 per minute. The math was immediate and horrible. Sam did it anyway. That's almost 60,000 a day. Yes. How long before the system crashes completely? Billy met his gaze. It already has. We're just watching the backlog pile up. Constantine moved closer to the desk, careful not to touch anything. I can clear the backlog. No. You can prevent new entries. Billy returned to her chair, picked up the pen, didn't write yet. But the ones already stuck will stay stuck. There's no mechanism to move them. The pathways are gone. Then we build new pathways. Using what? For the first time, something that might have been emotion crossed Billy's face. Might have been frustration. The infrastructure is divine. Angels grace heaven itself. You can't just redraw the map. I'm not redrawing it. Constantine pulled out the folded papers from his coat, the ones covered in symbols from the Book of the Damned. I'm replacing it. Temporarily. Long enough to flush the system. Billy stared at the papers. That's primordial syntax. Yeah. You're planning to invoke the empty directly. Already did, actually. Couple days ago. It's listening now. The temperature in the library dropped 10 degrees. Billy's fingers tightened on the pen. That was profoundly stupid. It was necessary. Constantine didn't flinch. The empty's already leaking. All I did was establish communication. Now I need to give it direction. Direction toward what? Constantine's pause was barely perceptible. Everything. Castiel spoke for the first time since they'd arrived, voice quiet but clear. He's planning a full shutdown. The entire afterlife system. Heaven, hell, all of it. Billy's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. Heavier, colder. And where do souls go when there's no heaven or hell? They don't go anywhere. Constantine met her gaze without hesitation. They sleep. In the empty. Forever. No consciousness, no pain. Just done. The silence that followed was absolute. Dean broke it. You knew. That's why we're here. I suspected. Billy set the pen down again, aligned it perfectly. The moment you started breaking cosmic law, I knew someone would try this eventually. I just didn't think it would be someone outside the divine hierarchy. That's why it'll work. Constantine tapped the papers. Angels can't do this. They're part of the system. Humans shouldn't be able to. But I'm neither, really. I'm just someone who learned to read the fine print. Sam watched Billy's face, trying to read what death might be thinking. It was like trying to read stone. You're considering it. I'm calculating. Billy opened a drawer in her desk, pulled out something wrapped in dark cloth. If I give you what you want, the backlog clears, eventually. But it also means every soul that comes after goes straight into nothing. No judgment, no second chances, just void. Yeah. Constantine didn't look away. That's the deal. And you think that's better? I think it's honest. Vine. Constantine's voice had gone flat. Right now, souls die thinking they're going somewhere. Heaven if they're good, hell if they're not. But neither place is real anymore. They're just filing cabinets that are on fire. At least my way they're not being lied to. Billy unwrapped the cloth slowly. The scythe underneath was smaller than Sam expected. More like a farming tool than a weapon. The blade looked like it was made from starlight and gravity there, and not there at the same time. "This isn't for killing," Billy said. "It's for severing. Connections, bonds, ties. You can cut a resurrection. You can cut a soul's link to its body. You can cut..." She paused. "You can cut anything that binds one state of existence to another." Constantine stared at the scythe with the expression of someone who'd just been handed a loaded gun. "That's exactly what I need." "I know." Billy held it across both palms, not offering yet. "But I need to understand the cost. You're not just cutting connections. You're cutting the possibility of connections. Forever. No one who dies after this can ever come back. No resurrections, no deals, no divine intervention." "Good." Dean's voice was rough. "Maybe that's how it should have been, all along." Billy's gaze moved to him. "You've died more than anyone alive. Multiple times. You'd still be in hell if divine intervention hadn't pulled you out." "I know." Dean didn't flinch. "And look what that got us. The apocalypse, leviathans, the darkness, the empty leaking. Every time we break the rules, the world gets worse. Maybe it's time we stop." "Maybe." Billy's attention returned to Constantine. "But that's not your call to make. It's mine. Because I'm the one who has to enforce it. I'm the one who has to tell every soul that dies that this is final. No appeals, no exceptions." Constantine nodded slowly. "So what's your price?" "Same as it always is." Billy extended the scythe, held it between them. "When this is over, when the system's shut down and the empty's sealed, I come for you. No warnings, no extensions. You die and you stay dead. In the void, like everyone else." "That was happening anyway." "Yes, but now you don't get to run. No tricks, no loopholes, no last-minute deals." Billy's voice was absolute. "You do this, you're done. Forever." Constantine reached for the scythe. His hand didn't shake. "I can live with that. You won't be living, that's the point." "Right." Constantine's fingers closed around the handle. The moment he touched it, his expression changed. Not pain. Something else. Recognition, maybe, or resignation. Heavy. "It's supposed to be." Billy released it. "Every death it's ever collected is still in there. You're holding the weight of ending." Constantine adjusted his grip, tested the balance. "How does it work? Touch the blade to what needs severing. It knows the rest." Billy sat back down, picked up her pen. "But understand, once you cut something, it's permanent. The scythe doesn't make mistakes. It severs cleanly, completely, forever." Sam stepped forward. "What if he cuts the wrong thing? Then that thing stays severed." Billy began writing again, dismissing them without words. "There's no undo button on death. There never has been." Constantine wrapped the scythe in the cloth Billy had provided, tucked it under his arm like it might try to escape. "One more thing." "No. You didn't hear. I know what you're going to ask." Billy kept writing. "You want to know if the souls already stuck in the in-between will suffer. The answer is no. They're in stasis. They don't know they're waiting. When the system flushes, they'll just stop. No awareness, no fear. It'll be instantaneous." Constantine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That wasn't my question. Then what was... Will it hurt the shutdown? Billy's pen paused. For whom? Everyone. Constantine's voice had gone quiet. Angels? Demons? Souls in heaven and hell? When the empty takes them, will they feel it? The silence stretched. Billy set down her pen for the third time. When she spoke, her voice was softer than it had been. Not kind, but honest. I don't know. No one's ever shut down an afterlife before. She looked up, met Constantine's eyes. But if I had to guess, yes, it'll hurt. Not physically, but existentially. They'll know something's ending. They'll feel the void coming, and there won't be anything they can do to stop it. Constantine nodded once. Right. Good to know. Is it? No. Constantine turned toward the door that hadn't been there before, but at least I'm not lying to myself about it. They stepped through and the library vanished like it had never existed. They were back in the bunker war room, same positions they'd been in before. The scythe sat on the map table, still wrapped somehow heavier here than it had been in Death's domain. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Castiel moved closer, stopped a few feet from the table. I can feel it from here. Yeah, Dean's voice was carefully neutral. It's not hostile, it's just... Cass struggled for the word. Final. It feels like the last thing that happens before nothing. Constantine unwrapped the scythe, slowly laid it bare on the table. In the bunker's fluorescent light, it looked less mystical and more like a tool. Sharp, efficient, purposeful. Right. Constantine straightened. Next step. I need to test this. Make sure it works on divine connections. Sam's head snapped up. Test it on what? Minor ward. Something expendable. Constantine gestured toward the bunker's upper level. Those wards up top are already dying. Let's see if we can cut one clean instead of letting it fade. They moved upstairs. Constantine selected a ward that had protected one of the old storage rooms, a silver symbol carved into the door frame 70 years ago. It was fading gray at the edges, but still visible. Constantine pressed the scythe's blade to the symbol. The ward didn't flicker, didn't fade, didn't resist. It just ended. One moment it was there, partially functional. The next it was gone, completely erased, like it had never existed. No residue, no echo, just absence. Dean whistled low. Hell of a tool. It's not a tool. Castiel's voice came from behind them, strained. It's an ending. That ward didn't fail. It was unmade. Constantine pulled the scythe back, wrapped it again. Good. That's what we need. Something that can cut divine connections without leaving loose ends. Connections like what? Sam asked, though he already knew the answer. Like resurrection pathways. Like divine intervention channels. Like the thread that ties Chuck to his creation. Constantine turned to face them. I'm going to cut God's ability to rewrite. Make him subject to his own rules. And then I'm going to use that opening to redirect the empty. Dean's expression hardened. And the scythe does what in that plan? It cuts the return trip. Makes sure when things end, they stay ended. Constantine's grip on the wrapped scythe tightened. No more resurrections means no more strain on the system. No more strain means we can control the shutdown instead of letting it collapse. That's still genocide, Sam said quietly. It's triage. Constantine met his gaze. You can't save everyone. You can only decide who suffers more, the ones dying now or the ones dying later. I'm choosing now. Fast. Clean. Over. Castiel stepped forward, and for the first time since they'd started this, he looked directly at Constantine. I'm going to die. When this happens, angels are part of the divine infrastructure. When you cut heaven, you cut us. Constantine didn't lie. Yeah. And you're comfortable with that? No. Constantine's voice was flat. But I'm willing to do it anyway. Cass nodded slowly. At least you're honest. He turned to Dean. The ward Constantine just cut. I could feel it. It's not just gone, it's forgotten. Like it never had the chance to exist. Same thing, Dean muttered. No. Cass met his eyes. Forgotten is worse than dead. The bunkers shook. Just once, but it was enough. Constantine looked at the scythe in his hands, then at the empty space where the ward had been. We're out of time. The empty's responding faster now. Every ritual, every cut, it gets stronger. Then maybe we should stop, Sam said. Can't. Already told Death we'd do this. She's counting on it. And more importantly, Constantine unwrapped the scythe one more time, studied the blade like it might have answers. I already made the cut that matters. The one in my own timeline. The moment I touched this, Death marked me. I don't get to walk away anymore. Dean's hand moved toward his gun, stopped. She trap you? No. I trapped myself. Constantine rewrapped the scythe with deliberate care. That's how deals with death work. You don't bargain, you volunteer. Sam felt something cold settle in his chest. What did you agree to? That when this is over, when the empty's sealed and the afterlife's shut down, I stay in the void. Forever. Constantine met his eyes. I'm the failsafe. The thing that makes sure it stays shut. You're going to die, Dean said flatly. Worse, I'm going to exist consciously in nothing forever. Constantine's smile had no warmth. But at least I'll have company. Every other soul that ever died. We'll all be asleep together. Castiel's next question was barely a whisper. Did Billy tell you what it feels like? The void. Constantine's pause was answer enough. The bunkers shook again, harder this time. And in the ritual room downstairs, the symbols Constantine had burned into the floor spread another 2 feet. Chapter 7, Constantine said quietly, coming up fast. He walked toward the stairs, scythe under his arm, and nobody tried to stop him. Because by now they all understood. There was no stopping anymore. There was only ending, and hoping it ended clean. The first angel fell at 3:47 a.m. Not fell like cast out. Fell like a puppet with cut strings. Dean watched it happen through the bunker's security feed, a reaper standing on a street corner in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just stopping. The wings were visible for half a second, burned into the concrete. Then nothing. No body. No grace. Just an empty coat crumpled on the sidewalk. Sam had been tracking the network chatter for 6 hours. Hunter reports flooding in from everywhere. Deaths that didn't take. Reapers that couldn't collect. Souls stuck in bodies that had stopped working. It's happening faster, Sam said without looking up from his laptop. 20 minutes ago, Reapers could still function. Now they're just dropping. Constantine stood at the map table, the scythe laid out in front of him, hands pressed flat on either side. He hadn't moved in an hour, just stared at the blade like it might tell him something he didn't already know. How long? Dean's voice was flat. Until what? Constantine didn't look up. until everything stops. Constantine's fingers drummed once against the table. We're past stops. We're in stopping. Active tense. Castiel was on the floor in the corner. Not collapsed. Just sitting. His tie was gone, shirt half unbuttoned, hair disheveled in a way that would have been funny if it wasn't terrifying. Every few minutes he'd tilt his head like he was listening to something the rest of them couldn't hear. Then he'd go still again. Dean moved to his side, crouched down. "Cass, talk to me. I can't hear them." Cass's eyes were unfocused. Any of them. Heaven's not silent. It's not there. Like trying to remember a word you never learned. "How many angels left?" Cass's laugh was quiet and broken. "I don't know. I can't count what isn't there." The bunker shook. Not earthquake tremors. Something else. A vibration that felt wrong, like the building itself was forgetting how to stand. Sam looked up sharply. The wards. They weren't fading anymore. They were dissolving. Real-time erasure symbols vanishing like water on hot stone. Dean watched a ward that had protected the armory for 70 years just stop being carved. The stone was smooth. Perfect. Like no one had ever touched it. That's not decay. Sam's voice had gone clinical the way it did when he was processing horror through research. That's retroactive. It's not destroying the wards. It's making it so they never existed. Constantine finally looked up. Yeah, that's how the empty works. Doesn't kill, unmakes. Can you stop it? No. Constantine picked up the scythe, felt its weight. But I can finish it. Dean stood. Finish what? The shutdown. Constantine wrapped the scythe in its cloth, careful and deliberate. Right now, the empty's leaking in slowly. Wards first, then angels, then everything else. It'll take days, maybe weeks. And every moment it's happening, people are dying and getting stuck. 37,000 yesterday, today. He shook his head. More. So we plug the leak, Dean said. Can't plug it. Can only redirect it. Constantine moved to the ritual room door, paused. I'm going to use the scythe to cut the resurrection pathways. All of them. Make death permanent. That stops the strain on the system. Then I'm going to use the quantum link to establish jurisdiction over Chuck. Force him into his own rules. And then... He trailed off. And then what? Sam's voice was dangerous. Then I give the empty what it wants. Everything that's already dead. Heaven, hell, all the souls in between. I flush it clean. Send it all back to sleep. Constantine met his gaze, including me. The silence stretched. Dean broke it. That's genocide. It's triage. Constantine's voice didn't rise. The system's already collapsing. I'm just controlling the collapse, making sure it ends instead of dragging out. And everyone in heaven, everyone in hell, they just get erased. They get rest. Constantine's grip on the scythe tightened. Real rest, not torture, not clouds and harps, just silence. Forever. The way it was supposed to be before angels decided to play filing clerk. Sam stood slowly. You don't get to make that choice. Someone has to. And you lot have been too busy playing hero to see the obvious answer. Constantine headed toward the ritual room. Stay up here. This part's not pretty. He didn't wait for a response. The ritual room floor was completely covered in symbols now. They'd spread from Constantine's original circle until they filled every inch of concrete crawling up the walls like ivy made of grammar. Constantine knelt in the center, unwrapped the scythe, pressed the blade to the floor. The moment it touched the symbols, lit up. All of them. Simultaneously. Not glowing. Burning. Like someone had poured gasoline on language and struck a match. Constantine spoke. Not English. Not anything Sam recognized, even after years of occult research. The words were shaped wrong, too many consonant syllables that looped back on themselves like Mobius strips made of sound. The temperature dropped. And dropped. And kept dropping until Dean's breath came out in solid clouds. Then the lights didn't just dim. They inverted again like in Chapter 4, but worse. Longer. And in that reversed moment, Dean saw it clearly. The walls weren't walls. The ceiling wasn't ceiling. Everything was just a thin membrane, stretched over an ocean of nothing. And the ocean was pressing in from every direction, patient and absolute and inevitable. When the lights came back, Constantine was bleeding from his nose, his ears, the corners of his eyes. But he didn't stop speaking. Didn't stop cutting. The scythe moved through the air like it was parting water. Invisible lines, severing pathways, collapsing connections, dying. Dean couldn't see what was being cut, but he could feel it. Like threads snapping one by one. Castiel screamed. It wasn't loud, barely above a whisper, but it was the sound of something fundamental breaking. Dean was at his side in 2 steps, but Cass wasn't seeing him. Wasn't seeing anything. "It's cutting heaven," Cass gasped. "The pathways, the resurrection channels. Everything that lets souls move between planes. It's just gone. Can you feel them?" Sam's voice was quiet. "The souls in heaven." Cass's eyes focused just for a second. They don't know yet, but they will. Soon. In the ritual room, Constantine stood. The scythe was darker now, like it had absorbed light. He turned toward the door, and when he spoke, his voice was raw. Phase 1 complete. Resurrection's dead. No one's coming back. Ever. He wiped blood from his face with his sleeve. Phase 2 established jurisdiction. "Over Chuck," Sam said. "Over the author." Constantine pulled out the bullet casing, the equalizer residue, set it on the floor at the ritual's center. This is the quantum link. His signature. His power. His connection to creation. He drew a new circle around it, smaller, tighter. Once I activate this, he'll feel it. He'll know someone's addressing him directly through his own authority. And he'll have to respond. "Or?" Dean asked. "There is no or. This is how cosmic law works. You establish jurisdiction, the defendant shows up, whether they want to or not." Constantine began drawing symbols around the casing. Not from the Book of the Damned this time. Something older, simpler. Just straight lines and angles, geometric and cold. "What happens when he shows up?" Sam's voice was careful. "I bind him. Make him subject to the contract I've been writing since Chapter 3. Constantine didn't look up. He wrote the rules. I'm just making sure he has to follow them. And if he doesn't? Constantine's smile was bitter. Then the empty eats him first, before everything else. The casing began to hum. Not sound exactly. More like pressure in the ears. Reality bending around a focal point. And somewhere very far away, something noticed. Chuck appeared without transition. One moment the ritual room was empty except for Constantine. The next, God was standing 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "John Constantine." Chuck's voice was conversational. Friendly almost. "I've been watching your little project. Have to say I'm impressed. Most people who try to hack creation just explode. I'm not hacking. Constantine straightened, faced him without fear. I'm auditing. Found some irregularities in the books. The books are fine. The books are on fire. Heaven's collapsing. Hell's backing up. The empty's leaking into reality because you and your sister spent eons using resurrection as a plot device. Constantine gestured at the symbols. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Chuck's smile didn't reach his eyes. By shutting down the afterlife. By ending the game. Constantine's voice was flat. You wanted to write stories. Fine. You wrote them. But the characters are done being edited. Time to put down the pen. And if I refuse? Constantine tapped the quantum circle with his boot. You're already in my jurisdiction. You showed up. That's acceptance of terms. You're bound now, same as anyone else who signs a contract. Chuck's expression shifted, still smiling but colder. You think you can bind God? I think I can bind the author. There's a difference. Constantine pulled out the papers from the Book of the Damned, held them up. This is primordial syntax, pre-divine language. The grammar that exists before you existed. And it says anyone who participates in the system is subject to its rules. I wrote the rules. Then you should have read the fine print. Constantine set the papers down, picked up the scythe. You established death as permanent for humans. No takebacks. But you kept a loophole for yourself. Divine intervention, resurrection, editing. That's called mercy. That's called hypocrisy. Constantine pressed the scythe's blade to the quantum circle. And now, I'm closing the loophole. For everyone, including you. Chuck stopped smiling. If you do that, I can't intervene. Ever. If something goes wrong, if the empty doesn't stop at the afterlife, I can't fix it. Good. Constantine's eyes were cold. Because you've had eons to fix it, and all you did was make it worse. Time for the universe to run without an author. He cut. The quantum circle shattered. Not broke. Shattered. Like glass, but silent pieces falling upward into nothing. Chuck staggered. Caught himself. When he straightened, something in his posture had changed. Less divine. More human. What did you do? Severed your connection to divine intervention. Constantine lowered the scythe. You're still God, still powerful. But you can't rewrite anymore. Can't undo deaths. Can't edit the story. You're just another character now. Chuck's hands clenched. You have no idea what you've done. I've done exactly what was necessary. Constantine turned away from him, back to the ritual. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a void to direct. Chuck vanished. Not teleported, just stopped being there. Like he'd decided not to exist in that moment. Constantine swayed, caught himself on the wall. Dean was through the door before Sam could stop him. You okay? No. Constantine's voice was raw, but I'm functional. What's phase 3? Constantine looked at him with eyes that had gone hollow. The flood. Full activation. I open the channel to the empty. Give it access to everything dead. Heaven, hell, every soul that's waiting. And then, he trailed off. And then, you stay behind, Sam said from the doorway. Yeah. Constantine pushed off the wall. Someone has to be the anchor, the fail-safe. Make sure when it sleeps, it stays asleep. Castiel appeared behind Sam, moving like every step hurt. I can feel it. The empty. It's not leaking anymore. It's listening. To what? Dean asked. To the invitation. Cass's eyes were dark, distant. Constantine's been building a door, and now he's about to open it. Constantine moved back to the ritual's center, knelt, pressed both hands to the floor. The symbols burned brighter, the temperature plummeted, and he spoke. Not words, not language, just sound. Pure phonemes that predated meaning grammar that existed before thought. The bunker didn't shake, it stilled. Every vibration, every hum, every tiny sound, gone. Absolute silence. Then the walls started to gray. Not darken. Gray. Desaturated. Like someone was draining the color from reality one shade at a time. Sam grabbed Dean's arm. We need to get out. Out where? Dean stared at the spreading gray. It's everywhere. And it was. Through the windows, through the walls, seeping up from the floor. Not fast. Just inevitable. The gray spread like frost, turning everything it touched into absence. In the ritual room, Constantine stood. His hands were steady, his voice was steady, but his eyes were resigned. It's coming, all of it. Heaven's, souls, hell's, damned, everything in between. The empty's going to take them all. Send them to sleep. Forever. And you, Dean's voice cracked. I go with them. Make sure they stay there. Constantine looked at each of them in turn. This is the part where you run. While you still can. Run where... Sam's voice was hollow. You're erasing the afterlife. There's nowhere to run to. No, I'm erasing what's dead. You're still alive. Constantine's expression softened, just slightly. You get to stay that way, for now, until your time comes. And then, he shrugged, then you sleep, like everyone else. Castiel took a step forward, stopped. I'm dying. Right now. I can feel my grace draining. I know. Constantine didn't apologize. I'm sorry it hurts. It doesn't hurt? Cass met his gaze. It's just... quiet. Like standing in a room after everyone's left. The gray reached the doorway. Sam pulled Dean back, but there was nowhere to go. The color was leaving everything. Sound, temperature, sensation. And in that growing absence, Dean heard it. Whispers. Millions of them. Every soul that had ever died speaking at once, words overlapping until they became a single note. Not scared, not angry, just confused. And then the note shifted. Lower, softer, accepting. Constantine closed his eyes. It's done. The gray stopped spreading, hung in the air like fog, and in the center of the ritual room where Constantine stood, a presence formed. Not a shape, not a figure, just presence. The feeling of standing at the edge of an infinite drop. The understanding that beneath everything, there was nothing. And the nothing was aware. When it spoke, it didn't use words. It just was. And everyone understood. Sleep. Constantine nodded. Yeah, that's the deal. The presence pressed closer, not threatening, curious. You offer cessation. I offer rest, real rest, for everything that's tired of being played with, and yourself. I'm part of the deal, the anchor. I stay conscious so they don't have to. The presence considered. The gray pulsed once, twice. Then it spoke again, and this time there was something almost like satisfaction in it. Acceptable. The gray surged, all at once. Not violent, just complete. And heaven emptied. Dean felt it like a punch to the chest. Every soul that had ever gone to heaven, millions, billions, just gone. Not destroyed, transferred. Moved from one state to another, from consciousness to sleep. And they went quietly. Hell followed. Demons, damned souls, everything suffering or causing suffering. Just released. Given to the empty. Given rest. The veil between living and dead collapsed. No more ghosts. No more hauntings. Everything that had been stuck resolved. Castiel fell to his knees. His eyes blazed bright for just a second. Then dimmed. Then became just eyes. Blue. Human. Lost. I can't feel it anymore. His voice was a whisper. I can't feel anything. I'm just... He touched his own face like he wasn't sure it was his. I'm just me. Sam caught him before he collapsed completely. Cass, stay with us. I am. That's the problem. Cass looked up and there were tears on his face. I'm not an angel anymore. I'm just... whatever's left. In the ritual room, Constantine stood at the center of the gray. It hadn't taken him yet. But it would. It was waiting. Dean stepped into the doorway. Constantine. The Brit looked up. Still here. For now. Is it done? Is everyone asleep? Yeah. Constantine's voice was soft. They're not suffering. They're not aware. They're just... not until they're ready to be again. When's that? Constantine's smile was bitter. Never. That's the point. The gray pulsed. Patient but insistent. Constantine took a breath. Right. Time's up. Wait. Sam's voice cut through the quiet. There has to be another way. Some way to... There isn't. Constantine interrupted gently. This is the endgame. The only endgame that works. Everything else just delays the inevitable. Dean's hand moved toward his gun. Stopped. I should stop you. You should. But you won't. Constantine met his gaze. Because you know I'm right. You just don't want to admit it. The gray began to pull. Slowly. Inevitably. Constantine didn't resist. Tell Chaz. He paused, shook his head. No, don't tell him anything. Let him think I went out doing something stupid. That's more on brand anyway. Sam opened his mouth, closed it. There was nothing to say. Constantine looked at Castiel one last time. Sorry, Angel, for what it's worth. Cass nodded. Couldn't speak. And then Constantine smiled. Not his usual bitter smirk. Something softer, more honest. At least nobody gets to write the sequel. The gray swallowed him whole. And the empty, finally fed, finally satisfied, finally given, what it had been owed since the beginning of everything, went back to sleep. The bunker came back into focus slowly. Color returned. Sound returned. But it was different now. Quieter. More fragile. Dean looked at his brother. Sam looked back. Castiel sat on the floor between them, more human than he'd ever been, and didn't know what to do with his hands. Is it over? Dean's voice was hoarse. Sam checked his laptop. The network chatter had stopped. No more reports of reapers falling, no more souls stuck in the in-between. Yeah, Sam closed the laptop. It's over. But the way he said it made it clear nothing would ever be the same. The empty wasn't a place. It was the absence of place. Constantine stood at the edge of what might have been ground, might have been air, might have been nothing. The symbols he'd written, the locks he'd built, the contracts he'd forged, all of it converged here in this space between existence and void. Behind him, reality still held. Barely. The bunker was a faint outline in the distance, growing dimmer by the second. Ahead was nothing. Pure, absolute, patient nothing. And somewhere in that nothing, the shadow waited. Sam and Dean stood at the threshold, unable to follow further. The line Constantine had drawn with the scythe was absolute. Cross it and you didn't come back. Not even as a ghost. This is it. Dean's voice sounded hollow, like the void was already eating the edges of sound. Constantine didn't turn around. Yeah. This is it. And you have to stay. Someone does. The failsafe doesn't work if it can walk away. Barge Thomas. Constantine's hands were steady, shoved in the pockets of his coat. Might as well be me. I'm already half dead anyway. Sam stepped as close to the line as he dared. There has to be another way. There isn't. Constantine finally turned, and his expression was perfectly neutral. No regret, no triumph, just acceptance. The empty responds to one thing, the promise of sleep. I promised it everything. Heaven, hell, purgatory, all of it. In exchange, it stops leaking. Stops trying to reclaim creation. But someone has to enforce it, Sam said slowly. Someone has to be the lock. Constantine pulled out a cigarette, looked at it, put it away. No point lighting it here. The moment I step fully into the void, the system shuts down. All pathways close. No resurrections. No divine intervention. Just one life, one death done. And you, Dean's voice had gone flat. You stay conscious, forever, in nothing. Constantine's smile was bitter. Small price for saving reality. That's not saving, that's imprisonment. Same thing from where I'm standing. Constantine turned back toward the void. Look, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to understand. I'm just asking you to let me finish what I started. Castiel stepped forward, moving slowly, like each step cost him. The angel's grace was barely visible now, flickering like a dying bulb. When you close the system, what happens to those already inside? Constantine's pause was barely perceptible. They sleep. No awareness. No dreams. Just off. And those of us caught between, Cass gestured at himself. Angels who are neither fully divine nor fully mortal. You fade. Slowly, over days, maybe weeks. The grace burns out because there's nothing left to sustain it. Then you're just... Constantine met his eyes. Human, mortal, one life. Cass nodded slowly. I can live with that. Can you? I've been preparing to fall for a long time. Cass looked at Dean, then Sam. At least this way I get to choose how I land. The void pulsed. Not moved. Pulsed. Like a heartbeat made of silence. Constantine felt it in his chest, that pull. The promise he'd made to the shadow, permanent sleep for everyone, including himself. No more writing. No more rewrites. Just the end that finally stuck. The Winchester brothers. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The shadow's presence was suffocating, vast, patient. Still meddling. Dean's hand went to his gun before his brain reminded him it was useless here. We're not the ones shutting down the universe. No, You're the ones who broke it. The shadow didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. Resurrection after resurrection. Apocalypse after apocalypse. You made the walls thin. He's just sealing the cracks. By destroying the afterlife, Sam said. By returning it to me. The shadow's attention shifted to Constantine. You promised me everything. I'm here to collect. Constantine stepped forward 1 foot over the line. The cold was immediate and absolute. You get everything. But you also get boundaries. You don't leak. You don't expand. You take what's yours and you sleep. And you enforce this how? By staying. Constantine took another step. I'm the lock, the seal, the thing that keeps you contained. You try to expand, you push against me first. One human against primordial nothing. The shadow almost laughed. That won't last. It doesn't have to last forever. Constantine pulled out the scythe, still wrapped. It just has to last long enough for everything else to fade. Once heaven and hell are empty, once every soul that ever existed is in here with us, there's nothing left to leak into. The equation balances. The shadow considered this. And God. God doesn't get a vote. Constantine's voice had gone cold. I used his own quantum signature to establish jurisdiction. He's bound by the contract, same as everyone else. No more interference. No more rewrites. The story's over. Silence. Deep, absolute. Then, very well. The world didn't shake. Didn't explode. It just stopped. Sam felt it first. The sense that something fundamental had changed. Like someone had turned off a light he hadn't known was on. Dean felt it second, a weight lifting. The constant pressure of being watched, of being characters in someone else's narrative, just gone. Castiel felt it most. The connection to heaven, already frayed, snapped completely. His grace didn't explode. It just faded gentle and final. He gasped once, pressed a hand to his chest, and when he opened his eyes again, they were just eyes. Human. Mortal. It's done, Cass whispered. Constantine stood fully in the void now on the other side of the line. The bunker's outline had disappeared completely. There was just him and the nothing and the contract he'd forged. One more thing, Constantine called back. His voice was already starting to sound distant. Tell Chaz I tried. Tell him it was worth it. We don't know anyone named Chaz, Sam said. Constantine's laugh was short and sharp. Right. Wrong universe. He paused. Then tell each other. When you die, really die permanent death, that it was worth it. One life. No do-overs. Make it count. Dean stepped to the line, as close as he could get. I don't forgive you. I know. But I get it. Constantine nodded once. That's enough. The void closed around him like water, and Constantine let it. The scythe in his hands grew heavier, became part of the boundary between everything and nothing. He could feel the weight of every soul that would ever die, all of them passing through him on their way to permanent rest. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was just quiet. The bunkers snapped back into focus around them, with a sound like a door closing. Sam, Dean, and Castiel stood in the war room, unchanged, except for Cass's eyes, which were blue now, instead of that otherworldly shade they'd been. Dean checked his watch. 5 minutes had passed, or 5 hours. Time felt wrong. Did it work? Sam pulled out his phone, but there was no signal. No bars. Nothing. Castiel walked to the wall, pressed his hand against a ward that had been fading for days. It was gone now. Completely. Heaven is silent. Not failing, silent. Like someone turned off the power. And hell, Dean asked. Same. Cass turned back. The entire divine infrastructure is asleep. Sam moved to the library, pulled out the book he'd been reading about primordial forces. The pages were still empty. But as he watched, new text began to appear. Not the original words. New ones. Simple ones. The system has been archived. No further entries will be accepted. That's it. Dean stared at the book. That's all we get. That's all there is. Sam closed the book carefully. The afterlife's not gone. It's just finished. No new souls. No resurrections. Everyone who was there is asleep now. And everyone who dies from now on joins them in the empty forever. They stood in the library for a long time, not speaking. Outside, the world continued. People lived, worked, loved, died. But the safety net was gone. Dean broke the silence first. So that's it. We just live now, one life. That's the deal. That's always been the deal, Sam said quietly. We just kept breaking it. Castiel walked to the door, looked out at the bunker's corridors. I should go. Find a life to live. One that doesn't end in being ripped apart by the narrative. You don't have to go, Dean said. I know. Cass smiled, and it looked strange on his newly human face. But I want to. For the first time, I get to choose what happens next. No heaven, no orders. Just me. He left without ceremony. Just walked out the door and kept going. Sam and Dean stayed in the bunker for 3 more days, checking reports, monitoring hunter networks. The world didn't end. It just changed. Hunters reported reapers no longer appeared at death sites. Prayers went unanswered. Demon possessions still happened, but exorcisms sent the demons nowhere. They just stopped. Turned off like machines unplugged. On the 4th day, Dean started the Impala and they drove. No destination, no hunt, just road. The radio didn't work anymore. No signal, no static. Just silence. You think he's okay? Dean asked after 100 miles. Constantine. Sam stared out the window at passing farmland. I don't know. I don't think okay applies to being locked in the void forever. Yeah. Dean's hands tightened on the wheel, then relaxed. But he did it. Bastard actually did it. He killed the afterlife. He killed the game, Dean corrected. No more resurrections. No more cosmic interference. No more someone else writing our story. And the cost? Dean didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. Everyone who dies from now on stays dead. Including us. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. Dean sounded surprised. For the first time in years, I'm actually okay with dying, meaning dead. Sam nodded. Me too. They drove until sunset, stopped at a motel that looked like every motel they'd ever stayed in. 2 beds, bad coffee, HBO. That night Sam dreamed. Not visions, not prophecies, just normal dreams, the kind everyone had. He woke up and didn't remember them. It was perfect. Far away, in a space between spaces, Constantine sat in nothing and smoked a cigarette that didn't exist. Around him, the empty slept. Billions of souls, all dreaming of nothing, all finally at rest. The shadow was there, too vast and patient, but quieter now. No longer pushing against the walls of reality. No longer trying to reclaim creation. Just sleeping. Constantine checked the lock one more time. The symbols held. The contract bound. The scythe lay across his lap, heavy and absolute. "This way," he said to nobody. "Nobody gets to write the sequel." The void didn't answer. It didn't need to. The story was over. And in that ending, Constantine found something he hadn't expected. Peace. Not happiness, not redemption. Just the quiet certainty that it was done, and it would stay done, and nobody else would have to pay for being written into someone else's narrative. He lit another cigarette that didn't exist, and waited. Forever. The world kept turning. People lived, loved, died. But the deaths stuck now. No resurrections, no second chances, no divine intervention. Just one life lived as well or as poorly as each person could manage. The Winchesters drove. Castiel found an apartment in a town whose name didn't matter. Got a job that didn't involve the apocalypse and learned what it meant to be mortal. The empty slept. And in the space where heaven used to sing and hell used to scream, there was only silence. Not the absence of sound, just the presence of ending. The world didn't end. It just stopped promising more. And somehow that was enough.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss out future videos. Thank you for watching and we will see you next time.